All right, let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. They lose 39-34 on the road against the Buffalo Bills. What was a crazy game, and when you're kind of looking at the slate of NFL games here over the weekend, I think probably the game of the weekend. I think the Bengals have found themselves in that spot several times over the course of the past few years, and unfortunately not on the smiling side of the scoreboard. We'll kind of break through exactly what happened in the first half. I thought the first half was exceptional for the Cincinnati Bengals, and then kind of go from there. But their big takeaway from this game, we'll get to the turnovers and the bad defense there in a minute, but offensively, you were 10 of 12 on third down. That is absolutely unbelievable. You were perfect 4 for 4 on the first drive, and you were able to go down there and score a touchdown. Now, I'm always a defer guy, right? If you have an opportunity to get the ball to start the second half, I always think that's the best thing to do. But I thought in this situation, Cincinnati getting the ball first was a really good thing for them, to have an opportunity to go down, score points early, kind of apply some pressure on Buffalo. And you saw that's what they were able to apply pressure early against Baltimore in the game on Thanksgiving night, kind of take Derrick Henry out of that game a little bit, right? You went down, you kicked a field goal, you got some of those turnovers there as well, and Baltimore was kind of on their back foot. I thought that was going to be a real key for Cincinnati in this game against Buffalo, and it ended up working out that way. James Cook still had a solid game. I think it was 80-ish yards, still over 4 yards per carry, so the run defense for the Bengals not great, but they had to rely on Josh Allen. They had to rely on being aggressive on fourth down to really hang in there in this game early on. But that first drive for Cincinnati I thought was just unbelievable, right? We talked about the Bengals' run game kind of improving. Run game was bad in this game for the Cincinnati Bengals. Chase Brown under 2 yards per carry. P. Ryan certainly had some good moments. He kind of was the real force for them in the run game, but Zach was trying to run the ball a little bit early. Didn't have any issues with him trying that, especially in the weather, in the snow, doing that. And because of that, and they weren't having success doing that, there was some big key third downs early in that game, and they hit a bunch of them. Perfect 4 for 4 there on first drive, and it was no Jamar Chase. And Joe Burrow talked about this after the game. Buffalo basically said, you know what? If you're going to beat us and score a bunch of points, fine, but one is not going to kill us in this game. And Joe Burrow said, okay. Mike Gesicki, Yoshi, and T. Higgins all had really big games as far as catching the ball in the passing game. So that first drive went about as good as you could have thought. 4 of 4 on third down. You go down there, you choose some clock, you score, you're up 7-0 on the road, right? And so many people, and we certainly did here at the show, when you look about kind of the time of the year, right, December football, the elements, right, it was snowing. So many people kind of drew comparisons to this game that transpired yesterday, and the game, of course, that the Bengals played against the Bills in the playoffs a couple of years ago. And, it was fun to do that as, someone that talks about it and as a fan, right? But, two totally different teams. Yeah, same quarterbacks and coaches, but really no reason to believe they would be similar. Well, it started out pretty similar, right? Because the Bengals in that playoff game, they went right down the field, scored, applied pressure early, and that's kind of what they were doing in this spot yesterday in Buffalo. So a great start to the game for Cincinnati. They settle in. Burrow looks good. Didn't really ask him to move a ton. Didn't run the ball great, but when you're a lead on third down in the NFL, you're going to have a lot of success, and that was the story for the Bengals in the first drive, really the story for them throughout the duration of the ball game there as well. And then the defense clearly did not have a good day yesterday, and they kind of reverted back to some old habits. We had talked about the defense, how they had gotten better, the Pittsburgh game, the New England game, certainly Thanksgiving, forcing the turnovers. And you're like, all right, are you going to be able to take a step in the right direction? I understand Drake May has had an incredible year. You could argue he's the MVP frontrunner here at this point. Stafford had a great game yesterday against the Arizona Cardinals, but, he's still not at that level. You're like, okay, you're going to find out about this team here against Josh Allen, and it was not good. In fact, it was not good whatsoever. Tight ends. The Bengals refuse to cover them. They don't know how to cover them. Not sure they know tight ends exist. Not sure they know that opposing teams are going to try to get tight ends to football against the Cincinnati Bengals. They absolutely lit up Cincinnati in this game. Kincaid came back. He was a big boost for Buffalo. Dawson Knox, right? The kind of their second guy at that tight end spot, who's had a great NFL career, by the way, but he was just killing the Bengals. And the first play of the game offensively for Buffalo, huge chunk play, and you're like, oh, here we go, shootout in Buffalo. And you catch a break. You catch a break there as Ty Johnson, I believe is his name, was running towards the end zone, and he just fell down because of the snow, right? If that game is being played where there's no snow, he goes in there and scores, and it's a 7-7 game right away. But you catch a break there, and there was some, discourse about how exactly Cincinnati, handled that play because he just went down without being touched. People were banging on Zach Taylor for not challenging that, right? Zach Taylor knows the rules. He knows what he's doing, and he didn't challenge that play. It was a good no challenge there. We'll talk about the other challenge in a little bit, but there were some people a little bit confused by that. Hand up accountability when it first happened. I'm kind of sitting there going, oh, what happened there? It's kind of one of those weird plays where he just goes down, the ball comes out, but at the end of the day, right decision by Cincinnati. He's down there at that spot, and they kind of go from there. Should have been a touchdown. Bengals defense, really for the only time in this game, kind of bows up, gets a stop. Kind of a negative play there on Josh Allen. Joseph Osai, right? He had a solid play there. He had a solid performance in the first half. Overall, I guess you could say Osai was solid again in the game as well. That's going to be a topic of conversation, by the way, this offseason, what to do with Joseph Osai. But a great play. You force 3, and you're like, okay, defense made a stand. They gave up some chunk plays. Tight ends killed you. But you're exactly where you want to be if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, up 7-3. Get the ball back. What are you going to do? Oh, you're going to continue to execute on third down. That was kind of a reoccurring theme here at this point for the Cincinnati Bengals. And you hit Mike Gesicki on the 3rd and 11. Mike Gesicki was awesome in this game. I was banging the table. Bring back Mike G. Joe Burrow was banging the table. Yeah, bring T back. Bring Jamar back. Bring Mike G back. And that was the first kind of Gesicki game where it's like, yes, that dude's a baller. That dude belongs here in Cincinnati. He's a real catalyst for this offense. He was exceptional in this game. On third down, huge 3rd and 11, and that's just T. Higgins being T. Higgins and Joe Burrow being Joe Burrow on that touchdown. Getting outside there, giving him a chance, right? Solid coverage there from Buffalo. That's just T saying, I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you, I'm taller than you, and I'm flat out better than you. And he makes the play in the corner of the end zone, and you're like, oh boy, here we go. And you remember it was kind of not a similar play, but they hit Hayden Hurst in the playoff game in the corner of the end zone too. This was a much more dramatic play, right, from T. Higgins, and he wasn't wide open, but he makes the play, and then boom, you're up 14-3, and you're like, here we go. Here we go at this point if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And then Buffalo had to respond. Right, they absolutely had to respond. If they didn't go down and score a touchdown on their second drive, and they're punting this thing back to Cincinnati, or perhaps kicking a field goal and being in a spot where you're down either 14-3, 14-6, you're in a world of hurt. So they really had Buffalo up against it early on in this game. But Josh Allen, we talk about Joe Burrow and how good he is. Josh Allen is unbelievable as well, and this was kind of a patent Josh Allen game. I just hope for the sake of football that we see some more matchups between Burrow and Allen. I understand, you play a different division each and every year. We understand that. But that could be, people always talk about, Mahomes and Allen, what a great matchup that is. Burrow and Allen, that's legit quarterback play, and specifically in the first half, we saw some elite quarterback play. Buffalo ends up getting down the field, and then McDermott's in a spot where he's like, we got to go for it. And they went for it on 4th down twice on that drive, and 4th down really was kind of the difference in this game, apart from the bad defense, of course, from Cincinnati, which we'll touch on in a second. But 2 of 2 on 4th down on that drive, the 4th and 4, they hit Gabe Davis for a big player there on the sideline. Offensive line protection held up there. Not able to quite get enough pass rush there on Josh Allen. It's on Turner. It's just, you tip your hat there in that situation. Rush wasn't able to get home. They make a good play. And then the second 4th down, obviously, they're on the goal line. One of the best plays. Josh Allen's got a full highlight reel stuff, but that's an unbelievable play. He's extending. He's evading rushers. They did a nice job applying some pressure. B.J. Hill is tracking him down. You got another rusher coming from behind him there as well. Kind of stops on a dime, throws it sort of back across his body, and Shakir just makes an unbelievable play in the end zone and just threads the needle through several of those Bengals linebackers, and they score. And it's like, okay, we do have a ball game here at this point. They go for 2, they get it. It's a 3-point game, and you're kind of up against it there a little bit there as well. But you go down and score again. The Bengals, first 3 drives, 3 touchdowns on the road against the Buffalo Bills in the snow. It was kind of a majestic start, honestly, especially for the Bengals offensively. Huge PI call there on that drive. Again, Joe Burrow understanding that, if you're going to miss, underthrow. There's going to be a good chance that you can get a PI. You drew one there. Huge 3rd down again on that drive from Mike Gesicki. Again, Gesicki can't say enough good things about his performance in the game. And then you have the Zach Taylor challenge, right? And again, I'll be open and transparent here, where when he threw the flag, I said, oh no, right? Because, worst case, you have it 1st and goal from the 1. Bengals have struggled in short yardage. We understand that. If it's a touchdown, you want to take your touchdown, but it was really, really close. And also, I think there was maybe an argument, too, that he didn't catch the ball, right? Especially this day and age with the NFL, and, he caught it, he didn't catch it. It's very difficult at times to figure out what is the catch and what isn't. And I think all Bengals fans just kind of based on how this team has performed this year and just being a Bengals fan over the course of your life, you wouldn't have been surprised that they said, oh, yeah, we took a look at this, and actually it's an incomplete pass. Bring all these guys back and kind of go from there. But Zach was right. So people want to sit here and scratch their head. What was he thinking throwing the challenge flag? He was right. We were wrong. He's the coach. He gets paid to make these decisions, and he was right. He deserves a lot of credit for it. He would have gotten killed, right, if it didn't work or it was ruled an incomplete pass. I understand that, but he's the coach. He went for it. It worked. Touchdown, Cincinnati. You've got 21 points here at this point. And then, again, I've talked about how critical fourth down was in this game, specifically when Buffalo had the football. You forced a turnover on downs, right? They were going to be aggressive. They were down in that spot. It was, 21-11 there at that point for Buffalo, and they're like, we're going to go. Kind of had it in no man's land there, 45-ish yard line for the Cincinnati Bengals. Cedric Johnson, he makes an appearance. We were banging on the table. Get Cedric Johnson out there. Give him some opportunities. He makes a huge play on fourth down. It's a turnover and downs, and you're sitting there going, oh, we got an opportunity here to extend this lead, perhaps make it a 3-score game if you can get in the end zone. Buffalo getting the ball to start the third quarter, it would have been really nice to be able to get an opportunity to score some points there for the Cincinnati Bengals going into half. Ced Johnson, fourth down, deserves a ton of credit there for that. You get the ball back, and this was the first time. And, again, you're sitting here watching this team going, wow, these 3 possessions, 3 touchdowns. It's very hard to nitpick the Cincinnati Bengals offense, but you have to, right? And, look, when you built this team, Higgins, Chase, Burrow, this was going to kind of be how it was. You hoped that they wouldn't have to be basically perfect on offense. You hoped there would be a little bit of leeway, but there's going to be some games, particularly against the late quarterback, where you got to score a ton of points and be borderline perfect. And there was a great opportunity there with field position for the Cincinnati Bengals to go down and at least get an Evan McPherson field goal, make it a 13-point lead. Weren't able to do it. And, there was a play, and it was funny enough, it was Benford, which obviously we'll talk about him in a second, where he comes off the edge on a blitz, and Joe Burrow doesn't feel him, and he had no clue he was coming. I don't know if he thought there was going to be protection over there, but he just didn't see it. And that's something that you never see with Joe Burrow. And he comes flying off the edge, boom, hits Burrow right in the back. It's a big sack for, I think a loss of 8 yards there on that play. And I'm like, that doesn't happen with Joe Burrow. So that was kind of a head scratcher when that took place. And then it was 3rd and 18. Joe extends, throws one down the middle of the field to T, and it was just barely missed. He had a guy in his face, kind of caused the throw to sail a little bit. T maybe could have made an adjustment, had an opportunity there, but that was kind of the first miss of the game, and it was at the very end of the first half on 3rd and a mile, and, that's going to happen. Again, you're not going to be perfect offensively, and that was kind of the first time where it was like, you had an opportunity to get some points. Defense bowed up, got a stop on 4th down, which was huge. But you go into the half leading by 10 points. Everybody would have taken that, right? 5.5-point dogs coming into the game. Bengals covered by a half point, by the way. That was a huge play there in the game. And then coming out of half, you're like, okay, Buffalo's they're not going to roll over here. They're going to find a way to score points. And you knew that Cincinnati was going to have to score points if they were ultimately going to, respond and win the game. And, Buffalo goes down, they score, and they're getting some more points, right? We're going through the third quarter, kind of exchanging some scores a little bit there. And then you hit the play with Gesicki. Right? In the end zone, you score. There was, 8 or 9 minutes left in the ball game, and you go up 10 points, and it feels really good. It feels really good if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And you understand that Buffalo's going to score again, right? But all you were asking for from your defense was, okay, there's about 8-ish minutes. I don't know the exact time, but about 8 minutes. You got a 10-point lead. You're on the road. At least choose some clock here. At least make them go on a drive where it's getting a little bit close to the 2-minute warning, right, before they go in to score. And obviously that's not what happened, right? Not what happened, as it was a handful of plays capped off by a 40-yard rush from Josh Allen. That just can't happen. That just can't happen. He has to be accounted for. Why did the Bengals struggle when quarterbacks decide to run? I understand they can't tackle, right, but it's Josh Allen. Right, that is part of what makes him so good, is he can run at any given time, and he'll run over you, and he'll run faster than you, and he'll run right past you. There really was nobody in the vicinity. He goes down there and scores. And you're feeling so great, right? And then you look up at the clock, and you're like, well, at least some time came off the clock. Hardly any time came off the clock whatsoever, and then you put yourself in a tough spot, right? You have a 3-point lead. There's, 7-ish minutes left in the game, and you understand that, hey, you got to go get some first downs. Now, you had done it the whole game, and there was confidence that you were going to be able to do it, but all of a sudden there was a little bit of pressure applied by Buffalo, in large part not because they scored, how easy and how quickly they scored. It almost felt like it just completely eliminated that drive where you score with Gesicki, and it was like, oh, congrats, but that means nothing. Boom, we'll score in the snap of 2 fingers. Again, that was the key. I think a lot of us expected Josh Allen to go down and score, but we were all hoping it was at least going to take 4, 5, 6 minutes off the clock. And no, it was a handful of plays capped off by a 40-yard run, and next thing you know, your offense is right back out there, and you're going, shoot, well, if you go 3 and out with the 3-point lead, Buffalo's about to take the lead in this game. And then this is when all heck breaks loose for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a first down play. They're trying to get it out of Joe's hands quickly to Jamar. Jamar had been stymied throughout this game. Again, Joe mentioned this after the game where he was like, they were doing everything in their power to not let Jamar beat him. And it looked like Zach, Joe, whatever, I think it was a check there. Again, I don't want to bang on them too much for, check into that play or the decision to have that play as a potential play they could go to, because they're sitting there going, one hasn't really touched the ball much. Let's get him the ball. And that's an easy way to get your guy the ball. They snap the ball under center, and Joe throws it to Jamar, and it just didn't look clean, right? It did not look clean from the jump. Again, if you go back and watch that play, it looks like Jamar takes a step and a half downfield, which to me, that's never supposed to happen. If you're supposed to draw up a kind of screen like that, the last thing you want him to do is go like a yard or two downfield, because that's just allowing a guy to come in and potentially undercut it. Now, I understand there wasn't tight coverage on Jamar, right? But that just didn't look like that was clean. Like, something tells me he wasn't supposed to, take a couple of steps or a step or whatever downfield like that. Joe throws it, and it just didn't look like he had the ball secured, and it kind of looked like he almost shot-putted it to Jamar, and in that spot there's no mustard on the football, and Benford jumps up in the air, great athleticism by him, and reels it in and takes it the other way, and you're like, oh my goodness, we've been winning the whole game. Now there's only a few minutes left in this game. We're in the fourth quarter, and we are losing. So when I break down that play, understanding the situation, I hate that that's a play that is potentially one they could go to. Again, we're being nitpicky here. I understand that. But when you look at a kind of a screenplay like that, there's a world where it's not just incomplete. There's a world where it gets picked off and it's going the other way. You had so much success throwing the ball over the middle of the field, right? All game. Like, let's keep doing that. Look, Bengals shouldn't have ran the ball there. They needed to go down and score. It was only a 3-point lead. But the way their defense was playing, they needed to go get points, at least 3, probably 7 in that spot. No reason for them to take their foot off the accelerator. I would have liked to see more over the field. Again, it was first down, right? Like, if you're trying to run that on a third down play or something and then, go from there, I understand it. But it's first down, and that's what you went to. It just doesn't feel like a safe play. I understand, like, what do you mean? Screenplay, it should be pretty safe. But there's an opportunity for that play to be a complete disaster. And that's what happened for Cincinnati, and it goes back the other way. We'll talk about, after we get to the end of the game, we'll kind of talk about Burrow in a second. He, by the way, had an opportunity to make a tackle. Are we going to bang on the quarterback who was basically perfect for not making a tackle? I'll let you guys decide there, but had an opportunity to get Benford on the ground. Wasn't able to do it, and you could just kind of see that thing about playing in the snow. It kind of slows down everything for you, right? And you saw Jamar going after Benford, and he just wasn't able to kind of find that gear that we see Jamar find, and I think it's because he's running on the snow, right? I think if you're watching him run on the turf, he has a better chance at tracking down Benford and making a play, but he ends up scoring. Right, and then you're in a spot like, how in the world are we losing this game? You were, but I know what I thought immediately when that happened. Oh, man, that stinks. That sucks, but we're going to go down and score points here and retake the lead, and then it'll be up to our defense if they can hang on for dear life or not. And that dream died pretty quickly as first play, deflection, pick, and then you're kind of in a tough spot from there. Shades of the Bear game a few years ago, early in Joe's career, where I think it was 3 consecutive plays. It was 3 picks. That was not good. And honestly, shades of the Viking game earlier this year, right, going into halftime where you just gave up a ton of points in like no time, 21 points in like 4 minutes for the Buffalo Bills. Just not a recipe to win games that way. And then after the second pick, your defense is, able to force them in a spot where it's fourth down. Again, they were aggressive on fourth down all day. and it worked out for them. They were in a spot where it's like, well, do you kick the field goal here and then take your 7-point lead and then really give Cincinnati a chance, or do you try to go for the jugular and score a touchdown here? McDermott obviously went for the jugular. Ryan Day, of course, would have kicked it. We'll talk about him later in the show. And, it's a 2-score lead. Bengals, they fought back. They get down the field, move the ball at will. The play to T, taking a shot. Not quite sure how you let that happen if you're Buffalo. T was sensational in the game. Really, he hit his head hard several times, coming back from a concussion. So, said after game, he's a soldier. He absolutely is. People early in T's career have, mentioned him like being soft or something. T. Higgins is a dog. He showed that in the game as well. I tip my hat to him and his performance. And then you kind of get to the last part of that game here, and there's controversy as far as what do you do? Do you go onside? Do you try to kick it through the end zone? Do you potentially give him a chance to return? What's the mindset going into there? And I try to be as honest as I can, because it's easy to sit here and say, oh, that was dumb after something happens. I try to be as honest as I can with you guys when a decision is made, which is going to be controversial. I tell you how I'm feeling in the moment, right? Because that's what Zach Taylor's doing. He's making a call right in the moment. In the moment, I thought they should have went onside, right? Because they had done it earlier in the year against the Bears and had success, right? And, it's very rare this day and age to recover an onside kick. So there was a little bit built-in success, and it was only one timeout. I understand you had the 2-minute warning, but it was only one timeout. Hand up. Everybody that thought they should have went onside, we're all wrong. Right? We are all wrong because they handled it perfectly the way Cincinnati did this. You're seeing teams in the NFL do this because it's so unlikely that you recover an onside kick. If there's a chance that you can force a 3-and-out and get the ball back, these coaches are going to take it every single time. That's what Zach did. So if you thought they should have onsided it, you were wrong. I was one of those people. I was wrong. And ultimately, they get in a great spot. 3rd and 15, right? An opportunity to get the ball back. No timeouts, but a minute. The way you had moved the ball throughout the game, the big plays that you had hit, specifically to T. Higgins, as a Bengal fan, getting it back, you thought, you know what? We're in a spot here to go win this game with 1 minute on the clock. Obviously, that did not happen. That kind of was just a microcosm of the whole Bengals year defensively to this point. They've given up 3rd and long 1,000,000 times this year, and they do it again to kind of dig their own graves here, seemingly this year with Josh Allen. 3rd and 15. You're not going to spy Josh Allen? Are you kidding me? Right? The last thing they were going to do, McDermott had been aggressive all day, but I would have been shocked if they would have tried to throw something at the sticks. Right, 15 yards down the field. They'd try a little screenplay or something, maybe. But even with Josh Allen, I would have been shocked if they risked trying to throw it to the sticks 15 yards and potentially stop the clock, which would have been huge. Right? They were running the football or throwing a screen. And you had guys sagged back towards the line of game as if that wasn't going to happen. And you didn't have a singular guy spying Josh Allen. Right? How? 3rd and 15 with the game on the line, and you're surprised that Josh Allen took off and used his legs in this spot? How does that happen? I don't understand. If you're Al Golden, if you're Zach Taylor, if you're this Bengals defense, even if you're on a call where you're like, oh, nobody's watching the quarterback, somebody needs to go, we're going to get out of this, and we're going to have somebody watch the quarterback, right? Because he's going to take off in this spot. He takes off, and there was only one guy that had a chance to make a play. It was Geno Stone. But, look, I don't care how good of a tackler you are. We all know Geno Stone is not a good tackler. But even if you are one-on-one in space with Josh Allen, game on the line, good luck. Not very many people are making that play. Geno, of course, did not make the play. It's a first down, and the game is over. And just devastating way for the football game to end for Cincinnati. 3rd and 15, thinking Joe Burrow is going to have a chance to get the football back, and boom. Josh Allen takes off to the surprise of nobody watching the game, but I guess to the surprise of Al Golden, Zach Taylor, and the Bengals defense, and they lose. So there's a couple of takeaways, obviously, that you have from a game like this. We'll talk about the defense, talk about Zach, we'll talk about Joe. Let's start with Joe. Joe Burrow was exceptional in this game, and we sit here and we play the what-if game, and we all love Joe Flacco and what he was able to do for this team, right? If Joe Flacco was playing this game, it's not close. Buffalo wins this game, no problem at all. Joe Burrow was unbelievable. Some of the stuff in the first half, the touchdown passes were all gorgeous. The one to Chase Brown on the move, just right where it needs to be. Great play by Chase Brown, hauling it in. Had a drop in the end zone later in the game, of course, but great play there by Chase Brown. Just the composure on 3rd down. Whenever you're going against an elite quarterback in Josh Allen, you got to be good on 3rd down. 10 of 12 on 3rd down. And, they were 80%, at a point in the fourth quarter. Just unbelievable. That first drive 4 for 4 because they're sitting there trying to run the ball, right? And teams do that. First drive, let's see if we can run the ball a little bit today. That's what Zach was doing. Don't have an issue with that. But it's going to put a lot of pressure on your third down offense. The calls were great from Zach. The execution was unbelievable. Yoshi had the drop. Joe said, no worries. I'll go right back to you on the next play. First down. Mike G on third down. Unbelievable. T. Higgins, unbelievable. He's doing all that basically without Jamar. Jamar only had a few catches for like 40-some yards, right? I get he had a lot of one-on-one opportunities when he was going away from Jamar, but it's not like he was just, throwing it to Jamar, right? He was playing quarterback. He was orchestrating the offense to perfection. Deserves a ton of credit for that. Again, like, where are you going to sit there and say, that was bad, besides the picks? The 3rd and 18 to T with a guy in his face wasn't his perfect throw. Had an opportunity to get some points there. I don't think that's nearly as bad as not recognizing the blitz that was coming and taking the sack on the previous play. But that's literally the first 30 minutes of football. That's the only thing you could even say was a little bit off with Joe, which is like he was borderline perfect in the first half. You had a punt in the second half, a 3-and-out. It's going to happen. It's football, right? And then really you get to the turnovers. And it's not like, Reed was saying, that's one of his biggest mistakes. I disagree with that. Like, yeah, it was the timing of it was bad. The fact it was back-to-back plays was bad. But, like, it was a great play by Benford. Now, I say Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the National Football League, and something I've always done for a couple of years now is I say that, but I hold him to that standard. And there's some people in this town that don't want to hold him to that standard. They want to say how good he is, but then not hold him to that standard. If you go into Buffalo against Josh Allen on the road and throw 2 picks in the fourth quarter, you're not going to win. I don't care how good you play every other minute throughout the game. If that happens against Josh Allen in the fourth quarter and you throw 2 picks, you're not going to win. Now, you could sit there and say that, it was a great play by Benford and it was unlucky on the deflection on the second one, and you might be right. But the reality is, as bad as the defense was, the offense had a chance to win the game, and they were unable to do it. Joe Burrow deserves a little bit of criticism for it. If I'm going to call him the best quarterback in the National Football League and the best player in the National Football League, I have to hold him to that standard. I understand it was unlucky. I understand it was great plays from Buffalo. Can't turn it over 2 times in the fourth quarter if you're the best player in the league and expect to win, right? So that's unfortunate. But besides that, he was unbelievable. I don't think, as great as Joe Flacco was, this isn't a game, right? The defense looks even worse if you don't have Joe Burrow because you don't score, obviously, as many points, and it probably gets ugly, honestly, if you don't have Joe Burrow in this game. But he was absolutely unbelievable. He deserves a ton of credit for that. We talked about Mike G. We talked about T there as well. Now for the Bengals defense. Said the past few weeks they had been taking steps in the right direction. They clearly had been, right? The Pittsburgh game, the New England game, 5-turnover game against Baltimore on Thanksgiving night, taking steps in the right direction. They were tackling a little bit better as well. They reverted back to old habits here. And we were talking about with Charlie Goldsmith last week, and I was like, what if the Bengals, they go on this run here, which if the defense just played average, they're well on their way to this run. I was like, are you worried at all that, the front office and the decision makers with this organization will say, we got hot at the end. All we needed was Joe Burrow. Run it back with the same guys. Bring back Geno Stone. Bring back Joseph Osai. Let the rookies keep playing at linebacker. Part of me was a little bit worried about that. But then seeing a game like this, understanding that Joe Burrow had the 2 picks, but basically it was Superman in this game and he still lost, that should be, that should let the organization know that, yep, some serious changes need to be made here. Some serious changes need to be made. From a front perspective, I continue to be a little bit intrigued, right? Osai, he made a huge play in the first half, forcing a field goal. That was big. Cedric Johnson, 6th-round pick, right? We talk about hitting on guys later in the draft. If you want to win Super Bowls, be a playoff team, compete for championships, you can't just hit your first-round guys. You got to find guys in the later stages of the draft. Bengals, of course, don't know how to hit their early picks either, right? But the later picks, we haven't seen a hit yet either. I think Cedric Johnson could perhaps be a hit for you. Now, is he going to be a starter or your second guy? You want him to kind of be your 3, but I was impressed with Cedric Johnson. The play he made on 4th down, he's been making plays for a couple of weeks, so I continue to be a little intrigued about what I see from the front. B.J. Hill's been better in recent weeks. He still seems like, what are you doing bringing him back? We love you, B.J. It was a great run here in Cincinnati, but the 3-year deal that they gave him this offseason, didn't really understand it. I continue to not understand that. Slayton, oh my goodness, he had a sack. First sack of the year. Holy cow. Finally, he does something. That was promising to see. So the front, I don't have too many issues with the front. But then you get to the second layers of that defense, and the linebackers were dreadful in the game. right? If you're a linebacker in this league, you're going to have to be in a spot where you can make one-on-one tackles, and he's just getting exposed. He being Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. They have plays in space that can be made, and they're not making them. Tough in the snow, right? Tough in the snow. I definitely think the snow is advantage offense because things really slow down. But, I mean, when you couple in the snow, Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight, they already look slow out there. They looked really slow out there in the snow, and just you can't do that when you have those two guys at linebacker. I said when they made the move off Logan Wilson, I understand he's frustrated that he's not playing. I understand he wants out, but there's value in Logan Wilson playing. I think in a spot after they beat Baltimore on Thanksgiving, all of a sudden the playoffs, it becomes kind of a thing going into this game against Buffalo. Would have been awfully nice to have Logan Wilson in this game. They did not. They paid the price. Linebackers were awful. Turner continues to make plays, dropped an interception, which, again, the room for error for this team. Battle drop one as well. You drop picks. They weren't easy plays to make. Absolutely not difficult plays in the snow. I understand that, but they got to be made, especially if you can't tackle and you can't force any punts. Bengals didn't force any punts in this game. I don't know who the Bills punter is. He didn't make an appearance unless he was holding, right? I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. You can't go into a National Football League game and not force a singular punt. Turner had the fumble, which, again, that's kind of like it's an opportunity for you, right? That looked like a surefire touchdown. Remember, they scored, but then was brought back on the penalty, and it looked like they were going to score again. And then you catch a break. You make a nice play there at the goal line, and that's still not even enough for your defense to be able to overcome that. Turner was solid in the game, as he continued to be. He had a pass breakup there as well. Pleased with him. On defense, extend DJ Turner. I'm ready to say that at this point. I've been iffy about it for weeks. I think I'm ready to go out there and extend Juan Drago and bring him back for the foreseeable future. I think he's a guy you can build around. Again, you had to pick some of these guys that are going to stick around. I think he's one of them. And then the back end of your defense is terrible there as well. The tight end, I mean, it is crazy that it's like the Bengals don't even think, despite how bad they've been covering tight ends, it's like they're not going to try. These tight ends, they're not going to try to get their tight ends the football. And they do it each and every week. And just Knox went off in the game. Kincaid, they got him back. He was a spark. And then the guy that caught their last touchdown, whose name is escaping me right now, I mean, come on, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. The receivers, like Buffalo, like Khalil Shakir is like their best guy. The kid they drafted from Florida State, that's kind of been a mess, right? Coleman. Right? I mean, they were just relying on tight ends, and their tight ends were just cooking you all game long there as well. I don't understand how fundamentally that can happen. Get somebody on a tight end that can run. Like, these guys aren't that fast. These tight ends, they're big, but just get somebody that can hang with them. You got these tight ends just running free. First play of the game from scrimmage from Buffalo offensively, wide open, huge play, right, after the Bengals scored. And you're just like, oh, here we go. It's a shootout. They got to figure that out. It's just ridiculous. And that's an indictment on Zach Taylor, and that's an indictment on Al Golden. Right? Come on. That can't happen. Absolutely can't happen. Dax, you have your questions with him. The safeties are bad, right? Geno, Battle. It's just, it should be enough. When you score this many points, I understand you turned it over in the fourth quarter twice, but it should be enough. I mean, some of the stats as it relates to this are ridiculous, right? Scored 33-plus points. They do that a lot. The rest of the NFL, since the start of the 2024 season, teams that score 33 or more points are 136, 10, and 2. Teams not named the Cincinnati Bengals. 136, 10, and 2 since the start of the 2024 season when a team scores 33 or more points. Bengals are 4 and 7. Bengals score 33 or more points the past 2 years, and their record is 4 and 7. That's ridiculous, right? That's absolutely ridiculous, and that's embarrassing. So, what I mentioned, talking with Charlie about this, I was a little bit worried that, they might just try to run this thing back. I think this should be a big-time wake-up call to everybody. Like, yep, Joe Burrow's back. It's great. He played great, but they were still not close to winning this game because of how bad their defense was. Superman almost bailed him out. He put the cape on, made some mistakes in the fourth quarter. Defense clearly not close in this game. Wholesale changes are needed this offseason. We'll see if Al Golden is invited back or not. But, if you're Zach Taylor, I don't know how many times you can, fire the coordinator. I think you can probably do it once. But then if he fires Al Golden again after just firing Lou Anarumo, like at some point it's like, Zach, like, come on. And Joe talked about this, about, the coaches are saying all the right things, putting the guys in good spots. They're just not making the plays. Well, the guy drafting the guys needs to be held accountable. Somebody needs to be held accountable because it's not close. And they kind of fooled us the past few weeks. I had a little cautious optimism about how things were going defensively for this team the past few weeks, but you put them out there against an elite quarterback, and it looks like we thought it would, right? And it just no timely stops. Didn't force a punt all game. Yeah, nice. Well done getting the fumble. Well done, catching the break there when Johnson falls down and you force a field goal. Well done on those two aspects. But you have to force a punt in a football game, right? An NFL team, I don't care how often they're going for it on fourth down, you need to force a punt in a game if you want to win. Bengals didn't force a singular punt there as well. So that's Joe. That's the defense. Again, Gesicki, really happy with that. P. Ryan, front office deserves a lot of crap for how things have transpired to this point. P. Ryan, they hit that signing out of the park. Great. Outstanding. Samaje P. Ryan has been great for this football team. He deserves a lot of credit for that. I tip my hat to him. Lastly, Zach. When the Bengals lose, people always want to look at Zach, and I said this on Off the Bench, and I'll kind of reiterate it here. My biggest thing with Zach is that your defense stinks and you're the head coach, so you're to blame, right? That you got to blame in some capacity. You got to figure that out. But if you want to nitpick Zach in this game, again, what are you going to do, right? You're mad at him that he challenged the Chase Brown play and he was right and they scored, right? You're going to be mad at him for a touchdown. I understand it would have been first and goal from the 1, but you don't want to take any chances. How bad were the Bengals around the goal line last week against Baltimore, right? So he's sitting there like, well, it's a touchdown. We're going to challenge it. He was right. Can't bang on Zach Taylor for that. Hand up. When he threw the flag, I'm like, Zach, what are we doing? What are we doing? He was right. Deserves credit for that. Again, the play earlier with the fumble, he knows the rules. Well done by Zach. The play calling was good. Third down, exceptional. Third down is a reflection on the head coach and the quarterback. Well, the quarterback's really good. Head coach put him in good spots there on third down. Deserves some credit for that. And then you're mad about how things transpired. They didn't kick the onside kick. Again, in the moment, I thought he should have kicked it, but it was 3rd and 15. You're staring at getting the football back with a minute left with Joe Burrow. It was right there for the taking, and your defense couldn't get off the field on 3rd and 15, knowing that they were going to run the football, right? Bengals, of course, didn't realize that Josh Allen was capable of running, despite the fact that he ran for a 40-yard touchdown not long before that. I got no issues with Zach, really, in this game specifically. My issue is your defense is horrible, and you're the head coach. That's kind of my takeaway with Zach Taylor here at this point. But the Bengals lose. It's kind of our hashing through it all there as we do kind of our summary and then our takeaways here. It's frustrating as you kind of look at the AFC North because we've talked about how accessible this division has been throughout the course of the year. It's been just so accessible, right? So accessible with how bad Baltimore and Pittsburgh are there for the taking. And even despite all of your collapses and struggles and bad performance, kind of accessible if you win this game. Kind of accessible if you win this game, right? And the Bengals would have liked to see Baltimore beat Pittsburgh. But, one team's got to win that game. So, their chances went down when Pittsburgh won. But, just very accessible, very there for the taking and unable to do it. They need Baltimore to go 2-2. They have an opportunity, of course, to provide one of those losses with the game this week. Pittsburgh's got to go 1-3. They got Miami on Monday Night Football, a team that's been playing a little bit better in Pittsburgh. They have to go to Detroit. I would imagine that's going to be a loss. They got to play Cleveland at Cleveland, divisional game. I guess anything could happen there. And then they play Baltimore again as well. But they need a collapse from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they, of course, need to run the table in order for that to happen. The Reds, of course, got a collapse from the New York Mets. We'll see if the Bengals can get one from Pittsburgh. Wouldn't count on it, obviously. But even here at this point, like if you win this game against Buffalo, there's a heck of a lot of life. Doesn't look great, but there's all types of life if you win the game yesterday. Had it won for the majority of it. You look up halfway through the fourth quarter. All of a sudden, you don't have the lead. 21 points in 4 minutes for the Buffalo Bills, and kind of fits right in with how this season has gone, and frankly how last season went as well. We'll kind of get into the demeanor of Joe Burrow at the press conference and some other things related to him and Zach. We'll touch on that tomorrow's show. But Cincinnati Bengals lose 39-34, devastating fashion. To me, I think that is the most heartbreaking loss of the year. People might say I'm crazy. You lost to the Jets. You lost to the Bears with seconds left. How can you say that? I just think that the confidence you have as a team is a little bit different when you have Joe Burrow, right? I wasn't drinking all the Kool-Aid. I understand that. I thought there was a possibility that they would lose. I predicted they would win. I thought they would win. They didn't. But there's just when he's not out there, you kind of just it's kind of a Jesus take the wheel, hands up thing. You don't really know what to expect. I thought they would at least be able to hang on here, and they weren't able to do it. Crushing loss for Cincinnati. Had it right there for the taking and fumbled it away.